Cheating rarely begins in the bedroom. It begins in language, in subtle shifts, in small sentences that sound harmless if you're naive, but dangerous if you understand human nature. Most men think betrayal arrives like a thunderstorm, loud, obvious, impossible to miss. It doesn't. It arrives like fog, quiet, gradual, rational. And by the time the weak man realizes what happened, the truth has already been building behind his back for weeks, sometimes months. Gentlemen, listen carefully. The woman who cheats usually doesn't announce it with rebellion. She announces it with comfort, with innocence, with words designed to lower your guard while her behavior starts moving in another direction. That is the part most men miss. They watch for guilt, panic, and confession. But real betrayal doesn't begin with confession. It begins with narrative control. It begins with little lies that buy emotional space, moral cover, and plausible deniability. And the deeper truth is this: a disciplined man does not judge reality by tone alone. He does not get hypnotized by softness, beauty, tears, or reassurance. He observes patterns, he watches congruence, he measures words against behavior. Because stoic men understand something emotional, men never do. People reveal themselves less by what they say than by what their words are trying to protect. By the end of this, you're going to understand four lies that often show up before infidelity fully surfaces. Not because women are robots reading from the same script, not because every relationship follows the same path, but because human nature leaves fingerprints. When desire shifts, when loyalty weakens, when secrecy grows, language changes first. And once you learn to hear it, you stop living blind. The first lie sounds mature, reasonable even. I just need space. Now, let's be clear, real space exists. Healthy people need solitude. Pressure can suffocate connection. That part is true. But here's what most men miss. When a woman says she needs space, the real question is not whether the sentence sounds valid. The real question is space from what and space for whom, because there are two very different kinds of distance. One kind of distance is honest. It still carries warmth. It still carries clarity. It still carries respect. She may be overwhelmed, stressed, emotionally exhausted, but the bond still feels intact. There is no sudden coldness, no strange defensiveness, no vague disappearance mixed with selective availability. Her behavior still says, I need to breathe, but I'm still with you. The other kind of distance is more dangerous. It is not space for peace, it is space for transition, space to detach without accountability, space to test another emotional current while keeping you on emotional standby. That is the version weak men fail to recognize. They hear space and they immediately become compliant, apologetic, eager to prove their understanding. They back away in confusion while she emotionally reallocates attention somewhere else. And this is where it gets dangerous. When attraction drops, guilt rises. And instead of directly admitting what is happening inside her, she may frame her withdrawal as a personal need. Not because she wants truth, but because I need space sounds cleaner than I no longer feel anchored to you and I want room to explore what else I feel. One sentence preserves her image, the other exposes her intentions. So most people choose the sentence that protects identity. Pay attention to the pattern. Before she wanted closeness, now closeness irritates her. Before your presence felt grounding, now your presence feels heavy. Before she explained things voluntarily, now you have to pull simple answers out of her like teeth. And when you ask direct questions, you don't get direct clarity, you get emotional fog. You're overthinking. I'm just tired. I don't know what I feel right now. These are not always proof of betrayal, but they are often evidence of internal movement. The man without discipline reacts emotionally here. He panics, he chases, he overcalls, he writes paragraphs, he begs for reassurance, and in doing that, he destroys the last piece of leverage he had: composure. Strong men don't do that. A strong man hears, I need space, and instead of collapsing, he observes. He doesn't argue with words, he watches what the distance produces. Does space create clarity or more secrecy? Does distance restore connection or deepen indifference? Is she moving toward peace or toward someone else? That is the difference between a man ruled by fear and a man ruled by perception, because sometimes space is not a request for healing. It is a cover story for disconnection already in progress. And when a woman needs distance from the relationship but suddenly has energy for everyone else, the lie is no longer in the sentence. The lie is in the imbalance. Remember that. When someone truly values you, distance may happen, but respect does not disappear. Effort does not vanish. Transparency does not suddenly become too much to ask. If space comes with increased mystery, guardedness, and emotional dryness, then what you are seeing is not rest, it is drift. And drift, left unchallenged, becomes betrayal. The second lie is even more subtle because it disguises itself as innocence. He's just a friend. Gentlemen, most affairs do not begin with sex. They begin with emotional permission. They begin with repeated exposure, emotional comfort, private understanding, and the slow erosion of boundaries. By the time the weak man starts worrying, the real line was crossed long ago. Not physically, maybe, but psychologically. And that changes everything. Now, pay attention. There is nothing automatically wrong with a male friend. Adults can have friends. Anyone pretending otherwise is too simple to understand reality. But the danger has never been in the label. The danger is in the emotional function that man is starting to serve. What does she talk to him about? How often does his name come up? Does she downplay him while increasing access to him? Does she become weirdly defensive at basic questions? Does she protect the friendship harder than she protects your comfort? This is where hidden dynamics matter. A male friend becomes a threat when he begins to receive emotional energy that should require boundaries. Private venting, relationship complaints, sexual tension disguised as banter, constant texting at odd hours, little inside jokes, selective secrecy, soft emotional intimacy that would feel wrong if the roles were reversed. But because nothing has technically happened yet, the blind man lets it slide. That's how the trap works. Cheating often requires a moral bridge. A woman usually does not wake up one day and leap from loyalty into betrayal with no psychological transition. She crosses by inches. She justifies the closeness. She tells herself he understands her. She tells herself you've changed. She tells herself it's harmless. And if you question it too early, she may accuse you of insecurity. That accusation alone has silenced thousands of men who felt the truth before they could prove it. But instinct matters, not paranoid instinct, not traumatized suspicion, disciplined instinct, the kind that notices when a friend consistently appears in emotional spaces where boundaries should exist. The kind that notices when her eyes change at his name, when her tone shifts, when she becomes more concerned with defending his place than preserving your peace. Most men completely misread this because they think loyalty breaks at the point of contact. It doesn't. It usually breaks at the point of concealment. The moment she knows the dynamic would hurt you if fully exposed but continues feeding it anyway, the foundation is already cracking. And here's the catch. The stronger the emotional charge, the more casual the label becomes. He's just a friend. You have nothing to worry about. You're making it weird. That is often not clarity. That is compression. She is taking a complicated, charged, boundary blurring dynamic and shrinking it into a simple phrase so you stop looking deeper. But the deeper truth is simple. If she needs to repeatedly minimize a man's role in her life, his role is probably larger than the words suggest. A composed man does not compete for attention like a clown. He does not interrogate like a detective drunk on fear. He simply watches whether friendship is being used as camouflage. Respectful women make room for boundaries. Disloyal ones make room for excuses. If you're hearing this and you recognize the pattern, subscribe now. Not for noise, not for bitterness, but for clarity. Because in a world built on illusion, a man who sees clearly is already harder to manipulate. Now let's go deeper. The third lie sounds almost noble. I would never do that to you. That sentence is powerful because it does not answer behavior. It appeals to identity, and identity is where people hide when facts become uncomfortable. Listen carefully. When someone says, I would never do that to you, what are they really asking you to trust? Not evidence, not transparency, not consistency. They're asking you to trust the image they have of themselves or the image they want you to keep. That's why this lie is so effective. It bypasses your observation and goes straight for your sentiment. You remember the good version of her, the affectionate version, the loyal version, the woman who looked at you with warmth and made promises when things were easy. And because you remember who she was, you struggle to accept who she is becoming. That gap between memory and reality is where betrayal survives. Most men don't lose to lies because The lies are convincing. They lose because they are emotionally attached to an old picture. And this is why it matters. People rarely betray from a place of cartoon villainy. They betray from internal justification, from hunger, from resentment, from self deception, from the desire to feel alive, validated, chosen, powerful, wanted. In those moments, the self image remains intact by rewriting the meaning of the behavior. It just happened. I was confused. We were in a bad place. You weren't there for me. The person who said I would never do that often meant it at the time. But human beings are not measured by what they believe they are measured by what they do under temptation. That truth is darker than it looks because many men trust declarations more than patterns. They hear certainty in her voice and use it to silence their own perception. Even as the routine changes, even as secrecy grows, even as physical intimacy cools and emotional volatility increases, they cling to the statement because the statement protects them from pain. If she would never do that, then they don't have to face what their instincts are telling them. But reality doesn't bend for comfort. A woman on the edge of betrayal may speak more passionately about what she would never do precisely because she feels the need to manage suspicion before the truth surfaces. It is a preemptive shield, a moral performance, not always, but often enough that a wise man pays attention when reassurance grows louder while consistency grows weaker. Notice the structure. When trust is healthy, trust rarely needs theatrical language. It lives in rhythm, in openness, in ease, in behavior that does not trigger confusion. But when someone starts trying to sell you innocence rather than simply embody it, something underneath may already be unstable. That doesn't mean you become cynical. It means you stop being sedated by words. Stoicism is not coldness, it is clean perception. It is the refusal to let emotion corrupt your reading of reality. A stoic man can love deeply and still observe sharply. He can care without becoming blind. He can hear, I would never do that to you, and quietly ask himself, does her conduct make that sentence feel effortless or one necessary? That question alone can save a man years of denial because betrayal is often preceded by something subtler than deception. It is preceded by overcompensation, by the need to reinforce a moral image before behavior collapses beneath it. And once you understand that, you stop worshipping verbal reassurance like it's proof. The fourth lie is the one that destroys the most men because it hides inside conflict. You're paranoid, you're overthinking, you're insecure. Now, pay attention because this one is poison when you don't know how it works. Not every accusation of insecurity is manipulation. Sometimes a man really is projecting old wounds onto a healthy situation. That happens. But when a woman is moving dishonestly, one of the fastest ways to protect her freedom is to make your perception feel illegitimate. If she can make you doubt your own pattern recognition, she buys time, she keeps access, she avoids accountability and you begin policing your instincts instead of investigating the shift. That is psychological warfare at the relationship level, subtle, quiet, effective. A man notices something is off, the energy changed, the phone turns face down more often, she smiles at messages she won't explain, her schedule gets blurry, her patience with you shrinks while her emotional intensity becomes strangely inconsistent. He brings it up maybe calmly, maybe clumsily, and instead of engaging the substance, she attacks the lens. Why are you acting like this? You're imagining things. This is why I can't tell you anything. See what just happened. The discussion moved from her behavior to your stability. That move is everything. Once the frame becomes your insecurity, the original concern is no longer on trial. You are, your tone is, your reaction is, your masculinity is. And if you are not grounded, you will abandon your own perception just to escape the humiliation of appearing weak, jealous, or controlling. That is exactly why this tactic works so well on men who want to be seen as calm. But calmness without clarity is not strength. It is passivity wearing a masculine mask. Strong men don't explode, but they also don't surrender their judgment because someone used emotional labels against them. They know manipulation often sounds morally superior. It often arrives with offense, with wounded disbelief, with a performance designed to flip the pressure back onto the observer. And this is where weak men fail. They think composure means silence. It doesn't. Composure means staying steady enough to keep looking at reality when someone wants you to look away. It means you don't shout, but you also don't let yourself be trained out of your instincts. You examine them, you test them, you gather pattern after pattern until the truth becomes undeniable. Because here's the deeper truth: when someone is innocent, they usually clarify. When someone is guilty or approaching guilt, they often scramble to destabilize the person asking the question. Not always, but often, especially if the relationship has already entered that dangerous phase where image matters more than integrity. Picture the scenario. She starts dressing differently for casual outings you're not part of. A new emotional charge enters her life. She becomes less available, more guarded, but weirdly more irritated whenever you ask for simple consistency. You sense it, you raise it, and suddenly you're the problem. Your awareness is framed as weakness. Your perception is framed as dysfunction. Your concern is framed as damage. Most men fold right there, not because they're stupid, because they fear being the insecure guy more than they fear being betrayed by the wrong woman. Let that sink in. A man who cannot tolerate the possibility of being misunderstood will accept almost any level of disrespect just to preserve his image. That is not confidence, that is dependency on perception. Real masculine strength is quieter. It can stand in uncertainty without collapsing. It can say, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm still watching. It can leave when patterns become unacceptable without begging for one final confession that may never come. That is power, not domination, not rage, not revenge, clarity. These four lies matter because they reveal the real battlefield. Cheating is not just a physical event, it is a sequence, a drift, a rearrangement of attention, language, emotional permission, and moral framing. First comes distance disguised as need, then closeness disguised as friendship, then innocence sold as identity, then your perception attacked as insecurity. Piece by piece, the truth gets hidden behind language soft enough to calm a blind man and sharp enough to mislead a weak one. But here's what separates the grounded man from everyone else. He does not react to fear, he responds to pattern. He does not become paranoid, he becomes precise. He does not assume betrayal because of one sentence. He watches whether multiple signals begin telling the same story. That restraint is power because the goal is not to become suspicious of everything. The goal is to become ungovernable by illusion, to stop being the man who needs betrayal to become obvious before he grants his own instincts respect, to stop requiring proof at the level of humiliation when the pattern already told the truth at the level of behavior. And understand this clearly: if a woman is loyal, your awareness will not destroy the relationship, it will strengthen it. Truth can handle observation, integrity can handle questions, but if your calm attention creates panic, anger, vagueness, and blame, then what's threatened may not be trust. It may be access, it may be convenience, it may be the comfort of operating without scrutiny. That changes everything because now you're no longer just listening to what she says, you're listening to why she needs to say it. You're looking at what the sentence protects, what it delays, what it hides. You're reading not just language, but motive. And once a man learns that, he becomes very difficult to deceive. Gentlemen, the real lesson here is bigger than cheating. It's about how men lose themselves, not in catastrophe, but in compromise, in ignoring signals because the truth feels heavy, in accepting explanations that soothe the heart while insulting the mind, in confusing emotional hope with wisdom. That is how blind loyalty turns into self betrayal. Don't be that man. Be the man who stays composed when the energy shifts. Be the man who does not need to argue with words because he can read behavior. Be the man who understands that respect, attraction, and honesty are not maintained by pressure, but they are revealed by consistency. And above all, be the man who never abandons reality just because illusion speaks softly. Because in the end, the strongest men are not the loudest men, they are the clearest ones. The men who can feel emotion without being ruled by it. The men who can love without losing discernment. The men who can walk away from confusion before confusion turns into destruction. That is stoic power. That is masculine discipline. That is what most men spend years learning only after the damage is done. So if this sharpened your perception, make sure you subscribe, comment, clarity. If you understand that composure is power and observation is protection. And remember this: the next time reassurance sounds perfect, but behavior feels wrong. Weak men listen to words and hope for the best. Strong men watch patterns and live in truth.